Retro.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Rook Cast. I'm Jay Krebs.
I couldn't resist. All right, and you'll find
That
out
was
first.
awesome, Dennis. Good job.
Thank you. I practiced a little bit. I'm not sure how well it was. I think you're flattering me, but we'll find out. Well, we're going to wrap up this week with a look at some recent Star Wars news. But before we get into the world of Janix, can you remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
Sure. And you don't even have to go to the underworld to find us. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, Jay, it's crazy. Just like last week when we were getting ready to do the news and that representative from Lucasfilm called me up and said, hey, are you guys going to be recording soon? Okay, wait 15 minutes so they could get out the whole transition news.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I'm sitting here writing notes for the news, and all of a sudden he calls up again and he says, you're all recording tomorrow, right? And I'm like, yes. He goes, you mean it tomorrow? And I said, yeah, absolutely. He goes, like, good, because you're about to see some news about Maul. And I was like, well, I'm there for it, man. Of course, none of this happened. But I love playing around.
I love this.
Yes. And I am just so thankful that we've had 2 weeks in a row where the major breaking news has come out before we recorded that week.
I know.
So I wonder what's going to happen next week. But
I know our stars have been very much aligned for us. So I'm almost, thinking, wow, there's got to be a third thing in the trifecta here, right? Either that or we're pushing our luck way too much. One of the two.
So we're definitely waiting until Thursday, like we usually do next week. But so we've been teasing it, and I'm sure everyone listening already knows what we're ready to talk about, whether it was my lousy imitation or not. But we got the teaser trailer for Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord released today. And again, we're recording this on the 22nd. They teased the teaser yesterday on social media. And I don't know about you, Jay, but I've seen some fake trailers for Maul Shadow Lord. And so the first time I was scrolling through social media and there was something about this Maul thing coming up, I did not believe it was real for like a second until I kept scrolling. And then the same thing came up under another account. And then I was like, I actually noticed it was actually the Star Wars account. I was like, oh,
yeah.
So this is for real. We are getting a teaser tomorrow, which was pretty cool news.
Heck yeah. I know a lot of times you see those sites, it's like trailers are us basically.
Yeah.
And some of them do it, an okay job, but I mean, they're just not the real deal. So yeah. Fake news.
Well, and the teaser for the teaser was like this imagery that has nothing to do really with the teaser that we watched. It was this black and red imagery that kind of took some lines that Sam Witwer recorded for other stuff and, showed the final confrontation between Maul and Kenobi and a few other things. And then it did come with a very cool graphic, which was, all of Maul's face tattoos and the like there at the end. And they did a cool way of doing that. But just at first glance, I wasn't believing it because, well, what was the last animated series that had a teaser for a teaser?
Yeah,
Has that happened before?
I know. I think this is a first. Yeah. Good call.
So at any rate, the teaser dropped today, and along with some other information about this show, and some of this imagery was shown at Star Wars Celebration Japan last year, and I've seen very fuzzy versions of it, but it was really cool getting the regular res version of this. Before we get into the specifics, what did you think about this overall?
Oh, the teaser itself is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's so many things that we can unpack here, but it's really delivering on that kind of, crime noir feeling. And just the fact that, we knew that there was going to be this tie-in comic, but this is so like so well tied in
Hmm.
that it's just absolutely incredible. And I just I love Maul so much in these because he's like oddly refined chaos demon.
Yeah.
You see him as we go through this. Obviously, the first thing we see is him serving up tea. So, it's like you can't do the dark side justice unless you have a proper steep time to your tea kind of thing. So, I
Yeah.
love that about him.
Shortly before we jumped on the mics, I showed this teaser to Beth and Alec, and they watched it. They were both excited about it. But Beth turned to me. She goes, "So who are we supposed to root for in this one?"
I love that.
I was like, "That's a good question. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
certain about that, but it kind of strikes me that it is something like, well, I mean, we do know there's Maul setting up his criminal underworld or the next version of his criminal underworld, but it's
Mhm.
kind of like the gangster movies that we have. These aren't really good people, but they are our protagonists, so you end up rooting for them, or that's the side you're pulling because you get invested in their story. So I kind of feel like that's where we're going with this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's just like some of the other, um, kinds of books and things that we've had from Darth Maul before. Which one was it when he was in the jail and, he had to it was, oh,
Lockdown.
shoot, Lockdown, yeah, and of
Yeah.
course, he's this horrible, horrible person, but yet you're rooting for him to do all the things. So, I love that Beth pointed that out.
Yeah, the book that this reminded me of was the Shadowhunter one, where it
Yes.
takes place right before the Phantom Menace, and he's tracking down the underworld smuggler guy down on his luck, who's got the holocron information and all that stuff like that, and he tracks him all across Coruscant. And so there was moments that show up in this trailer, and I'll try to remember to address some of those as we go through it, that remind me of scenes from that book. And so that was kind of exciting because that was such a underrated book. It was so fast paced, action from start to finish. And
Mhm.
if you go to StarWars.com and you look up the entry, it's on the front page right now. I suspect it will be for a few days after the date this gets released, which will be the 23rd. It talks about this being a serialized show. It's going to be 10 episodes starting on April 6th, 2 per week, ending on May the 4th,
Oh, yeah.
which is very
Perfect.
interesting timing.
Yes.
But it's one, it's serialized. So unlike the Clone Wars, which is they'll have story arcs, but you can kind of jump in it anywhere during the
Mhm.
series. This
Mhm.
is a continuous story that starts with the first episode and ends in the last episode. So they kind of did that some with, especially with like the later seasons of the Bad Batch, I think. But
Yes.
that's not what they traditionally do with Star Wars animation. So how are you feeling about that?
No, I think that's a great move. And, it's again, we've referenced a couple times the whole Saturday morning serials sorts of things. And
Mhm.
this just gets right back to that. And I do think that it makes for a more cohesive story when you do it that way as well, instead of jumping from here and there and everywhere. So I really like that approach. And I think that just like I said, more cohesive. There's more continuity to it that way. And then you can really get invested in the story just because you know that it's gonna follow more of a sequential kind of pattern, if you will. So, yeah, I really like that. What do you think?
I'm of two minds on it. One of the things that I like, again, there's an attraction to a serialized series where you get those ability to introduce characters and have the mystery and have the twists that play out over the course of the entire season. They just aren't as easy to jump into, like say the Clone Wars and Rebels for that matter. Is that for the most part you can just turn it on, pick an episode at random, and you get a story in 25-30 minutes, whatever it might be there.
Mhm.
And there's an attraction. It's one of the things I liked about the old Star Trek versus the new Star Trek, because in the new Star Trek episodes or series are they're always serialized, except for
Mhm.
maybe Strange New Worlds. But I don't want to get too far down that aside there. And there's something fun about just being able to turn on and jump into a story where you don't have to think about what you missed from the previous episode or
Mhm.
remember exactly where everything is going. But the whole point of this series is him setting up his criminal underworld. So I'm good with this. I like kind of the long form story. It's 10 episodes, which is, I guess, kind of like on par for what typically happens with streaming anymore. You don't get 23 episode seasons because they're not aired over the course of a regular, fall through spring type of a thing. You feel any different about that, or what do you think?
No, I like that idea as well. It keeps it, I mean, short and sweet enough to where it can tell a good story and it doesn't have to drag it out too much. But then again, I mean, if it's really good, then we're gonna want it to be, you know, last as long as possible. But I do appreciate your outlook too about the idea of being able to jump into the series and not be serialized.
Mhm.
And so I hadn't thought of it in that way. So I'm glad you brought that up.
One thing I haven't noticed, and I'm looking at the story on StarWars.com, and I just did a search for the word limited. I haven't seen it described as a limited series. They're just calling it an animated series on this. Have you seen anything
Mm.
anywhere about it being limited?
I have not, but that's interesting wording, which means that there could be more. I like that.
Right. Yeah, because Obi-Wan Kenobi was a limited series.
Right.
So when that came out, it wasn't intended to have a follow-up season. Now they could make another Obi-Wan series, but they have to call it something else. And
Mhm.
that's key in the way it's considered for various Emmys and other award shows and things like that. I mean, they can tell a story in 10 episodes and make it succinct, and that'd be great, whatever. But I'm kind of hoping it's left open where we can get 3 seasons like we did with the Bad Batch, or 4
Mhm.
seasons with Rebels or whatever. Um, because Maul's just so cool, right? I want to see
Oh,
more.
yeah.
I want to
Oh,
see what everything he's up to, and
he's such
this
a
thing is set place roughly in the same time period as the Bad Batch.
Mhm.
So there's plenty of space to fill because Maul's still kicking at the time of Rebels, which is a couple years before Rogue One.
Yeah. Yeah, there could be some side quests, there could be some really interesting things that could come out of this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So we got some news about the cast. Of course, we've got Maul, who is Sam Witwer. He's no longer Darth Maul. Marok shows up, and he's being voiced by AJ Locascio. And of course, we are first introduced to Marok in Ahsoka season 1. So we are going to get some early introduction to this character. What do you make of that?
Mhm. Oh, no, I always love to see a good inquisitor, so
Mhm.
bring them on, and this is just it's the perfect, kind of nemesis for Maul, kind of a thorn in his side, so to speak, of his former life, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, we know he's going to get hunted down by the Inquisitors, and that's something that goes on for years, all the way up into Rebels when they
Mhm.
encounter him on Malachor. And then we've got Devin Azaria, who's being voiced by Gideon Alden, and this is a Twi'lek Jedi Padawan that is evading the Empire in Janix. I can't tell if Janix is just the name of the city or the planet. It's a little unclear from the article they have at StarWars.com, but I don't know. It's one of the things I think it's been out there that a lot of longtime Star Wars fans are hoping for is that this character will evolve into Darth Talon. I'm not so convinced of that from what I've seen from this
Mhm.
teaser, but what do you think?
That's an interesting take. I had not thought of that. I mean, I could see where maybe the, wish list item could potentially come from, but
Mhm.
I am very intrigued by this character, simply because of the fact that being a Jedi Padawan, obviously she's got some kind of issues with the Force and the balance and where her whole identity rides on this, and so it'll be really interesting to see what her mindset is going into this whole series and how that manifests itself throughout the episodes.
Right, and there'll be some very pointed instances of that in the trail that we'll be discussing here in a bit.
Mhm.
The next two characters are Brander Lawson, who is voiced by Wagner Mora, and that is the human police captain that's looking into everything here in Janix. And then we've got Two Boots. I love this. Star Wars is so good at coming up with droids.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
Voiced by Richards Ayoade. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. The droid's name is really 2B0T. So you can see how they come up with Two Boots. But it's the droid partner to Brander, very loyal to Brander, is how it's described on StarWars.com. And the notable feature is his attire selection and the fact that he wears two boots. So very on the nose. But these are the characters that are going to feature in the prequel comic. They did make mention that, and we kind of speculated about this on the news some weeks ago, that we weren't certain that the comic was actually going to have Maul in it. It's going to be these two characters maybe sniffing around the fact that Maul's maybe shown up or something like that. And they seem to kind of confirm that in this story. But what do you think about these two?
Oh, I'm super excited. And you hit it right on the head when you said Star Wars just does such a great job with the droids. And I mean, as far as like the gumshoes go,
Mhm.
I mean, this is just perfect for that with the detective and the little sidekick. And oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So the next character on the list is Master Iko Dio Daki. Say that 3 times fast. But it is being voiced by Dennis Haysbert. Awesome name. This character, it hasn't been specifically identified. It doesn't have a databank entry on StarWars.com. Maul, of course, has one. Marak is there. Devin, Azaria, Brander, and Two Boots all got entries over on the databank. But this character, I'm assuming, is a Jedi Master, and it's kind of a frog reptilian type looking character that shows up in the trailer. I'm assuming is this character here, because we do see this character using a lightsaber and using some force powers throughout, and just kind of seems to be checking everything out. I don't know how much there is to say about him based on what we know, but what are your initial thoughts?
Oh, again, just intrigued. I'm drinking all of this in and just trying to file away all of these little details so that way when this does premiere, I can just be looking out for them and just sort of keeping an ears and eyes wide open kind of perspective. So I don't know that there's too much to speculate at this point, but just very cool. I mean, just a
All
cool
right.
character.
So we got 5 more characters to discuss. I'm going to take them out of order, and I suspect you know why. But
Yeah.
the next one is Luti Vario, who's being voiced by Chris Diamond Topoulos. I have no idea who this is. Do you have any insight?
I do not at
Okay.
all.
And then we've got Riley Lawson, again, an unknown to me, voiced by Charlie Bushnell.
Mhm.
Spybot, so I'm guessing another droid of some sort, voiced by Star Wars veteran David W. Collins. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Icarus, very pointed name. They like to lean to
Yeah.
mythology names and stars at times, voiced by Steve Bloom. So the voice of Zeb coming back to do some work for animation. That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
And then the one I think you and I are probably going to be super excited about is that Rook cast returns, voiced by the one and only Vanessa Marshall.
Yay! One of our favorite people in the whole world.
Yeah, it's funny. The first 2 times I watched this trailer, I didn't catch on to that she was in it because we always get images from her from behind. But then when
Yeah.
I read the article, it's like, wait a minute, she's in it, and then it jumps out to you when you watch the
Oh,
trailer
yeah.
that's in fact
Yes.
Rook cast. You can even hear her say something, I think, over the course of the trailer. But I am so happy for Nessa that she keeps getting Star Wars work. There's no one more. I say that Sam Witwer is super deserving of Star Wars work, but she's on that same plane as
Oh,
him.
for sure.
These people who are so good to the fans, so interactive with fans, love Star Wars, have varying levels of encyclopedic knowledge on it. And
Mhm.
I remember when Rebels was first being introduced to Star Wars audiences, and she was going to cons and stuff like that, and just how much she talked about how excited she was about Star Wars and how much of a fan she was and how much Star Wars attire she had and how she would just randomly come up to people and start talking about Star Wars. She's always been very good to us, whether it's been Podcast Stardust or Starship Savers and Scoundrels. When I've talked to
Mhm.
her at conventions and things like that, A+ human being. And so I'm really excited to see that she's being included in this series.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, there's no one more deserving. And I have to say too, if you out there have not listened to Pot of Rebellion yet, that Vanessa does with the cast of Rebels, it is fantastic.
Yeah.
And they just relive all of the different, Rebels episodes, and they get really into like the deep dives and the behind the scenes and all kinds of things. But yeah, I was just tickled pink for Vanessa that she is once again back in Star Wars and in the role of her cast. So yay.
And I guess we should back up. people may not remember who Rookcast is, and that's one of the Mauldalorians that was
Yes.
part of his episode. Part of his effort to take over Mandalore back during the Clone Wars, and then of course in the Son of Dathomir comic that followed it. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And of course, whenever you listen to the bumper that we do at the beginning of the show, where Vanessa provided that, she always introduces herself as the voice of Hera and Rookcast. So
Mhm.
that's where that character comes from. So I'm
Yeah,
glad. Again, I'm repeating myself, I know, but I was really glad to see that she's being included in this. That's really pretty cool.
indeed.
So that gets us to the trailer itself, and it starts with the tea service that you mentioned, which is a nice touch. And we get this voiceover from Maul, and it's kind of broken up over the course of the entire trailer, but there's three main parts. So I'm just going to read them individually as we kind of come across them. But the first part says, he says, "Times have changed. I will show you the galaxy as it truly is. See things from a new perspective. I invite you to look more closely, and I offer you an opportunity." And this voiceover is followed up by a shot of Devin Azaria, and she goes, "Maul," and we get to see then like her reaction, and then we get to see Maul's face and all of that. This stood out to me as such a Maul thing to say from everything we learned about him and his expansive history outside of the Phantom Menace, where he barely had any dialogue at all, and what it was is like, I just want revenge. But I know, I thought this was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, and the thing about Maul is that he can seem so unhinged sometimes, but he's also very selectively serene, almost to a point of, like, manic, end to end kind of thing. But I mean, he's definitely rebranded. I mean, that's essentially what you get from that, seeing things from a new perspective. So as you mentioned, the Darth has been dropped from Darth Maul. And so now he's completely rebranding. So yeah, love that.
Right. And he's actively recruiting an apprentice here, is
Hmm.
what it seems like. Exactly what that means, I'm not sure. We've seen this before in Rebels when he was trying to recruit Ezra, and he just insisted that Ezra was his apprentice. Went around saying to Kanan, like, my apprentice. He just said, "Oh, you can use the Force. You're young. You're my apprentice." And in this case, it's a little different. He's actively trying to recruit Devin in this. And one of the things that the description on StarWars.com points out is that she finds herself in a very strange place, because obviously Order 66 has been enacted. The Jedi Order has been wiped out, and she's making her way in this galaxy, but she's kind of disillusioned with
Hmm.
everything.
Hmm.
So it seems like it's kind of like Maul's almost the devil, kind of reaching out this opportunity to gain some power, to gain some insight and stuff like that. And he's tempting her. And it's kind of a cool angle that they got going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is totally on brand for Maul because this isn't the first time. Think about even in season 7 of the Clone Wars, he even tried to get Ahsoka
Yep.
to follow him and come to his side. And then later on, he tries to get Ezra to come to his side and follow him. So, I don't know if it's so much as misery loves company as that, Maul, I think, truly does believe that knowledge is power and that the more power you have, the more chains you can break, which
Mhm.
is something that I picked up on here because, of course,
Yep.
that's part of the Sith code. But yeah, I think he looks for these allies so that he can mold and shape them into not only minions but as tools. And it's just like I said, it's just so on brand for him.
Right. And of course, we don't know anything about Devin outside
Right.
of
Yeah.
this series here. So we don't know how effective it is if she ends up falling to the dark side, or what that means, what type of apprentice she would potentially be in this case, where and I'm not saying his motives are pure here, but they were obviously sinister when we saw him trying to recruit Ezra and Rebels there. It was all about gaining power, getting that holocron, eventually maybe standing up to Palpatine, avoiding this. Inquisitorius is not necessarily evil, but
Hmm. Hmm.
he wasn't exactly good to Kanan, when all that stuff was happening either. So
Yeah.
uh, we also then get some shots throughout this trailer of Devin dealing with stormtroopers and a lot of clone era weapons, such as LAAT gunships and the like. But I noted that the stormtroopers that we see throughout this trailer have the same appearance that we got to see them with towards the end of the Bad Batch. It's kind of like the proto stormtrooper there. It
Mhm.
it's kind of funny how the appearance of the stormtrooper when we first saw them in A New Hope, and we can all remember what they look like there, and then you get the Force Awakens, and it's funny because we're recording this after episode 992, which we just did, and
Yes.
it's the first episode in our Force Awakens conversation, and we were talking about in that episode a little about the appearance of the stormtroopers, and I kind of joked about how they're like the stormtroopers. They look like the iPad version. It's kind of like a full circle moment, isn't it? I mean, they kind of
It
have
is, yes.
the appearance is something like that. That it's a lot less detailed, and then they evolve into what we see them in the A New Hope, and then they go back to this type of appearance in the Force Awakens, which is also weird. Excuse me, when you think about it, because think about the evolution of the clone trooper armor. It went from being
Mhm.
something in Attack of the Clones, and then we get to Revenge of the Sith, and it's morphed into something that's between Attack of the Clones and A New Hope. So a lot of variation going on there.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and obviously I mean, nothing can withstand a lightsaber, but they are definitely no match for Maul. That's for
Ah,
sure.
yeah. Okay, so the end of this trailer has him whipping out the double-bladed lightsaber and throwing it Vader style, except for it
Yeah.
arcs through like what, a half dozen stormtroopers
Mhm.
there?
And I love the way that and we'll talk more about the animation style here, I'm sure, in just a little bit, but I love the way that they have kind of made his lightsaber almost like its own character.
Mhm.
It has more of almost a blood trail to it, the way that it's being utilized by Maul in the flashes of light and the way that he's wielding it. And even in the way that when at the very beginning when he's having that tea and he just you know, very subtly has his lightsaber hilt just kind of sitting right there next to the tea service. So it's just love that. Love that.
You know, they go on to say that the series was created by David Filoni and he's acting in an executive producer role. But then they kind like if you read the StarWars.com article, there's a lot of other producers like, Brad Rao, or I think is his name. He's very involved as a supervising director of all of this. And so there's people that were familiar with from Lucasfilm, they're doing this. I get the feeling that Dave Filoni came up with the concept, came up with the story ideas and stuff like that. But kind of like with the Bad Batch, he's not as intimately involved as he was with the Clone Wars, which is fine because all those things have been fantastic there.
Mhm.
But if one thing we know about Dave Filoni is that just like George Lucas, he was interested in all that samurai type imagery and that those
Yeah.
Japanese films and stuff like that. I kind of got the feeling that he's starting to ground Maul in a little bit of that based on this tea ceremony thing. What's your thoughts?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. Even in the article, they talked a little bit about that, about how Sam Witwer had just witnessed or been through a Japanese tea ceremony. And so it was something that was being integrated into that. And so, oh, yeah, there's so much culture and so much history and everything integrated into Star Wars. And I'm so happy and tickled that it's continuing to do so. And that's just an aspect of the lore and of the creative aesthetic of Star Wars that's always just been part of its DNA.
Yeah. And it's really cool because on the one hand, Maul as the savage attack dog from the Phantom Menace was pretty cool, but really creating this evolved character is also cool. Um,
Mhm.
so I like what they've done with him here. Uh, we get a number, as we were just talking about, we get a number of images of Rook Cast. At one point, we get her from the back talking to Maul, and then later we get to see her using her flamethrower from her gauntlet, a la Jango Fett, which is pretty cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I said, she says something over the course. I swear I heard Vanessa Marshall's voice saying something, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was, and I failed to write it in my notes. So there we are. But number of shots of Brander and Two Boots throughout this, but not a lot to go by other than he's clearly investigating what's going on. At one point, he's looking at a hollow image of Maul, and he's looking at something on a screen that talks about how Maul is wanted. Um, did you come away with any insight on them or any thoughts?
Not really. I mean, other than just the fact, like I said, that they are really gonna be integral characters in the show as well as in the comics, and I'm really excited to see how their dynamic plays out in this whole thing, but obviously takes his job very seriously. He's very intense about this
Right.
whole thing, so yeah.
I'm looking forward to that prequel comic. I think that should be interesting. It's coming out in March, so I'm gonna have to remind myself to put something on the calendar to check it out before it comes out and get some little backstory on these characters. Another line that's delivered, or series of lines that I've put together, is that Maul says, "We have all been made to suffer. We survive, but do not live." Uh, I don't know how to phrase it, but that does seem like deliciously Sith Survivor.
Oh,
what,
yeah.
what did you make of that?
Oh, yeah, and again, it's totally on brand, and it's just so great. The whole thing is based around, like I said, that rebranding that Maul is
Mhm.
going through, and just the evolution of, where the genesis of Crimson Dawn comes in. It's so great. Love it.
Yeah. But it's just that this notion that, suffering is something that the apprentices frequently do with the Sith, right? It's that they are kind
Mhm,
of at the mercy of their masters, and then they
mhm.
suffer, and then they survive, and eventually they become more powerful, and they take over for the master, but they've not really done any living in the process. They've been molded
Right,
this entire time,
right.
and now he's been discarded as an apprentice, a Sith apprentice, and he's still part of this galaxy. I think he's speaking to the galaxy at large, right?
Oh,
Because there's
yeah.
so many worlds that have been subjugated. They're suffering. They survive, but that's all there is to existence, is just the survival and getting from one day to the next. They're not actually living. So it's a very insightful line, and I'm a little more interested to see how that shows up, if it shows up over the course of the series.
Mhm, me too. And it just speaks to Maul's entire mindset and MO, in this whole thing, in that what he sees for his future going forward and just really seizing that brass ring kinda thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's so good.
So then the final line that he's got, and as soon as I heard this, is like, oh, Jay has got to be salivating when he says, "Chains can be broken and empires can be shattered." Shattered.
Yes.
I mean, my chains are broken. Part of the Sith code, right there.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I mean, how loud did you scream when you heard that?
Oh, for sure, especially because, we're getting ready to once again jump into our whole Darth Bane book series, and I'm just so, so stoked for that, so stoked for that. But yeah, I definitely was like, "Yes!" That is
Hmm.
so great, so
Yeah.
prophetic.
And then we get images of Marak. And okay, what is the name of the other Inquisitor? It's escaping my mind. The one that kind of has the Raven type mask, the Plague Doctor type. You know what I'm talking about? The
Mm,
one that
mhm.
Ahsoka destroys or defeats at the end of Tales of the Jedi.
Oh, shoot. We often said that it could be oh, I can't think of it right now, right off the top of my head.
Yes.
I'm blanking. This is why I'm not good at Jeopardy. We would have to look it up.
I'm looking it up as we speak. Let's see if we can find this out. Didn't mean to put you on the spot,
No, you're
but
good.
let's see. Huh. Okay. Well, according to IMDb, it's just Inquisitor. Clancy
Okay.
Brown did the voice. So there we are. At any rate, so that Inquisitor shows up again, and so has a history with both Maul and Ahsoka, which is kind of fascinating in that regard. And so, yeah, some fight scenes. And so, the thing is about that is that when we meet Maul in Rebels, he's there on Malachor, and the Inquisitor, when they discover the Inquisitors, that he's there, they're very interested in potentially taking him down. It's kind of like it'll be a feather in anyone's hat that manages to do so. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I
and
think
then
Maul looks at it as a challenge though, almost like, "Oh, you've sent your minions after me."
and I think that's the exact right way to put it, Jay, is that he
Mhm.
minions. I don't think he takes these people seriously. I don't think
No,
he's
he
concerned about
doesn't.
any of them when
Well,
it comes down
and
to it.
Maul is like he's like a cat in a lot of
Mhm,
ways, and we've oftentimes referenced and likened him to a cat, and I think that he sees these inquisitors kind of like, little balls of yarn, "I'll just play with you for a little while. You don't really
mhm.
pose a threat."
Yeah, and then there's a lot of other scenes that pop up here, and I'll ask you if there's anything else that stood out to you in just a second. but I loved how we had those subtle themes from Duel of the Fates that showed up towards the
Mhm.
end of the trailer. Did you catch that?
Oh, yeah. Now who is doing the music for this? Is it Kevin Kiner, or is it one of the Kiner Music, family, now that his
The
kids
collective, such as they
the
are. Yeah.
collective? Yeah, yeah. Do we know?
I don't know, as a matter of fact, but since I am trying to look at the IMDb page, I will see if it tells us here. Let's see,
Okay.
all cast
But
and
yeah,
crew.
while you're looking, no, I appreciate that so much because it is, like you said, it's subtle themes of Duel of the Fates. So I think that that's an important aspect to think about if you're looking at the symbolism of that, in that it is a transitionary period for Maul. And again, it's kind of, I mentioned the rebranding kind of thing. So it's still, the shadows are kind of still there, but he is, moving his way into his own little identity.
Yeah, unfortunately, IMDb page does not have the music credits available yet. All it has is sound, animation, art, and the like, but
Mhm, mhm.
and legal, but they can't tell us who did the music. So,
Interesting.
well, it just may not be out there, and maybe we'll get teased with that as we get closer to time. So that is, I think we've hit most of the highlights of the trailer, and it's just something you definitely need to go back and watch. But before we move on, is there anything else that stood out to you that you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
Well, one thing that I really loved is just the animation style. One, it looks absolutely fantastic, but I love the cinematography that they used for this, and they talked about doing brushstrokes on
Yeah.
glass and then other physical elements, and that takes me back all the way to thinking about a lot of those original paintings that were done for the sets and things, even for A New Hope. And so I thought, "Oh my gosh, like, is this something that is going to be kind of the future, or is this something that's already been used?" And I just love the look of this. It's just beautiful. It does look painted in a lot of ways. And it reminds me a lot of Rebels in that way too. I mean, there was a lot of landscapes and things that look like they were painted. So I don't know if Rebels used some of the same sorts of filmmaking methods or whatnot. But it seems like they're really getting back to old school with this, and I'm so here for it.
Yeah, the map painting that they were talking about in the
Yeah.
article on stars.com, that was pretty cool. And the other thing they mentioned there is the they wanted to make like the faces, especially when they're talking, a little bit more liquid and fluid than what they've seen.
Mhm.
So what's cool is that we got the Clone Wars, which was groundbreaking for what it was, and then we got Rebels, which kind of just did a different style. So I'm not sure necessarily advanced a whole lot, with the exception of maybe lighting to the animation. Then it was, we're going to skip over Resistance because that just doesn't fit. But then they came back and gave us that seventh season of the Clone Wars, which raised the bar on animation, and then they raised it again with the Bad Batch and the Tales of different series there, and they're doing
Mhm.
it again here. It's just
Yeah.
like, for as stylized as it can be in places, there's also an element of realism that shines through with this animation that just tops everything that's come before it.
Yeah, no doubt. And, they just keep pushing the envelope with animation at Lucasfilm, which is absolutely amazing. And you think about, again, season 7 of the Clone Wars, and they used a lot of mocap for that as well. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if they did any of that, if that just hasn't been revealed yet for any of the episodes at all, or if these are just all completely, the matte paintings, canvas, brushstrokes on glass, all of the things.
Yeah, I don't know. They have not talked about anything like motion capture. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, if for no other reason that the motion capture was largely employed for that Maul versus Ahsoka duel,
Right. Mhm.
and that's such a special thing that it kind of calls for that extra step there. And so maybe they did. Who am I to say? I'm not an insider here, but I could also see them saying that what we're going to get in Maul Shadowhunter, while important, does not have that Maul versus Ahsoka, Maul versus Obi-Wan, Anakin versus Obi-Wan type of uh, gravitas to it
Mm-hmm.
that would warrant that type of thing. But
That's fair. Yeah. That it's a great part of the series, but not the substantial meat of the whole thing. I get that. Yep.
right. Well, I didn't think we were going to get 40 minutes out of this trailer and the news about Maul, but here we are. So,
Wow, look it up.
yeah, I am super excited for this. I love the fact that it's now coming out here, in just a couple months. It'll lead us right into May the 4th. Kind of makes me think that maybe we aren't going to get a Tales of series for May the 4th this year, which, okay, that's fine. I mean, if I get Maul Shadowhunter in its place, I'm good with that. And then just a few short weeks after that, we're going to get The Mandalorian and Grogu. So lots of exciting on-screen entertainment coming from Star Wars here in the next couple months.
Indeed.
So with that, well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our look at recent Star Wars news, particularly the small teaser trailer. There's a few other stories that we just didn't get to that we are going to keep for next week. They'll hold, and plenty of interesting things to discuss. Trust me on that one. But we hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and if so, if you want to get more of our take on Star Wars news, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and you'll get that every Friday, or at least Fridays that there are news to discuss. And I would also invite you to head over to retrozap.com, where you can catch all the past episodes of the show. Our entire catalog is there, all previous 989 episodes. Wow, we're just a few short 10 episodes away from 1,000, Jay. Yeah, and so once you're at RetroZap, if you want to catch some other content, there's plenty of other good podcasts that you can find over there, covering everything from Marvel, DC, video games, retro culture, and the like. So something for everybody. You want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online.
We can be found on Facebook and Instagram very conveniently at Podcast Stardust. And you can also hit up all of our other streaming platforms such as YouTube and YouTube Music, Spotify, Audible, all of the usual suspect places. And you don't even need two boots to help you find them. And there's also our Pinterest boards where we have plethora of ideas for everything Star Wars, all kinds of fun things. And then please drop us a line at our email address, which is podcaststardust@gmail.com. And if you would please send us your questions, we're going to be putting together a listener question episode here coming very, very soon. As Dennis was mentioning, we are coming up on 1,000 episodes. And also, keep an eye on those social media outlets as well for some interactive ways that you can get involved as that 1,000 episode gets closer as well. And then we also have our TeePublic store where you can pick up one of 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun things, from t-shirts and sweatshirts to coffee mugs and lots of fun stuff in between. And if you would like to do that, the link for that is in our show notes.
All right, Jay, remind everybody what you got going on in cosplay.
Yes, it's been a while, and ramping up the cosplay train to leave the station, the crazy train as it will here. Hopefully a little bit more coming up this spring. So you can check out all of my cosplay adventures on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay, where you can find me as Ahsoka, Hera, the Fourth Sister, my original concept Mandalorian, and much, much more.
All right, upcoming on the show on Monday, we're getting back into the Clone Wars rewatch. So if all the discussion of animation has gotten you excited, come check that episode out. So we'll get into the granddaddy of it all. And then on Wednesday, we are kicking off The Force Awakens series with part 1, naturally. And we've got a great guest for that. So thanks for listening to episode 990 of Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay warm and safe. A lot of cold weather coming in throughout most of the United States. And until next time, may the Force be with you.